Every failed presentation shares the same fatal flaw: it assumes information alone persuades. But here's what separates forgotten pitches from funded ventures, rejected proposals from signed contracts: the power of strategic narrative architecture. Picture this scenario. Two product managers present identical solutions to the same board. One drowns executives in feature lists and technical specifications. The other opens with, "What if I told you we're currently losing $3 million every quarter to a problem hiding in plain sight?" Same solution, vastly different outcomes. The difference isn't the data, it's the delivery framework that transforms information into influence. Welcome to the science of story-driven structure, where we'll master the six-part narrative framework that elite communicators use to move audiences from skepticism to action. This isn't about making things up or manipulating facts. This is about organizing truth in a way that compels decision makers to care, understand, and act. The framework consists of six essential movements: hook, context, stakes, solution, proof, and action. Think of these as musical movements in a symphony. Each serves a distinct purpose, yet they flow seamlessly into one another, building toward an inevitable crescendo. Miss one movement, and the entire performance falls flat. Let's begin with the hook, your narrative's make or break moment. You have roughly 8 seconds to earn the next 8 minutes of attention. The hook isn't merely an attention grabber, it's a strategic promise of value. Consider how Netflix doesn't just show you a title card, they autoplay a carefully selected scene that embodies the show's core conflict. Your hook should function similarly, immediately establishing relevance while creating an information gap that demands resolution. The most effective hooks share three characteristics. First, they connect to a specific pain point your audience already feels. Second, they introduce unexpected tension or contradiction. Third, they implicitly promise that resolution lies ahead. When addressing executives, your hook might highlight competitive threats or untapped opportunities. For technical audiences, you might open with a fascinating problem or counterintuitive finding. Customer-facing hooks often work best when they mirror the client's own language about their challenges. Once you've secured attention, context provides the necessary background without drowning in details. This is where many presenters stumble, mistaking context for comprehensive history. Context isn't about everything that happened, it's about everything needed to understand what happens next. Think of context as the minimum viable background. For executives, this might mean market conditions and competitive landscape. For technical stakeholders, it could mean system constraints and dependencies. For customers, context often means understanding their current workflow and pain points. The key to effective context lies in progressive disclosure. Start with the broadest relevant frame, then zoom in strategically. Imagine you're a cinematographer establishing the scene-wide shot of the city, medium shot of the building, close-up of the critical room where action unfolds. Each layer of context should directly support the stakes you're about to reveal. Now we reach the narrative's emotional core, the stakes. Stakes transform intellectual understanding into visceral concern. They answer the critical question lurking in every audience member's mind: why should I care about this right now? Stakes aren't just about problems, they are about trajectory. They show not just where we are, but where we're headed if nothing changes. Effective stakes operate on multiple levels simultaneously. There are organizational stakes: market share, revenue, competitive position. There are personal stakes: career advancement, team success, individual recognition. There are systemic stakes: technical debt, scalability limits, security vulnerabilities. The art lies in connecting all three levels while emphasizing what matters most to your specific audience. When presenting to executives, frame stakes in terms of strategic opportunity cost. What competitive advantage disappears if we delay? For technical audiences, emphasize architectural implications and compound complexity. For customers, focus on the growing gap between their current state and desired outcomes. Remember, stakes without urgency are merely interesting facts. Always include a time element that explains why action can't wait. With stakes established, your solution arrives as inevitable rather than imposed. This is where most presentations actually begin: a critical error that eliminates narrative power. By the time you present your solution, the audience should be mentally begging for it. They should feel the problem so acutely that any reasonable solution feels like relief. Present your solution in layers, starting with the conceptual approach before diving into specifics. Think of this as showing the blueprint before explaining the plumbing. For executives, emphasize strategic alignment and ROI. For technical stakeholders, focus on architecture and implementation elegance. For customers, demonstrate workflow transformation and user experience improvements. But solutions without proof are merely promises. This brings us to the evidence phase, where skepticism meets substantiation. Proof isn't about overwhelming audiences with data, it's about providing the right evidence in the right format for the right concerns. Different audiences require different proof points. Executives want case studies and market validation. Technical stakeholders want performance benchmarks and architectural diagrams. Customers want testimonials and demonstration scenarios. The most compelling proof follows the principle of progressive certainty. Start with the most relatable evidence, similar companies or situations. Move to quantifiable results, metrics, measurements, improvements. Then provide experiential proof demos, prototypes, pilots. This progression moves audiences from "this could work" to "this will work" to "I can see this working." Finally, we reach the action phase, your narrative's culmination and catalyst. Many presentations end with a whimper, "Any questions?" This wastes all the momentum you've carefully built. Your action close should feel like the only logical next step, not an aggressive sales push. The key is to make action feel easier than inaction. Effective action steps share several characteristics. They are specific rather than vague, immediate rather than eventual, and collaborative rather than prescriptive. For executives, this might mean approving a pilot program or forming a steering committee. For technical stakeholders, it could mean scheduling architecture reviews or proof of concept development. For customers, it might mean starting with a single department or use case. The power of this framework lies not in rigid application but in thoughtful adaptation. Like a jazz musician who knows when to follow the chart and when to improvise, you must sense when to expand or contract each element based on audience response. Sometimes a hook needs more edge. Sometimes stakes require more urgency. Sometimes proof demands more depth. Consider how this framework scales across different communication contexts. A 30-second elevator pitch might compress all 6 elements into single sentences. A board presentation might spend 5 minutes on stakes alone. A technical deep dive might weigh heavily toward solution and proof. The framework remains consistent, the emphasis shifts strategically. Remember, stories aren't decorations added to business communication, they are the fundamental structure through which humans process complex information and make decisions. When you master the 6-part framework, you don't just present better, you think better, organize better, and influence better. The difference between presenters who inform and leaders who transform lies in this narrative architecture. Your expertise hasn't changed, your data hasn't improved, but your ability to package that expertise into a compelling narrative that changes everything. Start practicing this framework tomorrow. Take your next presentation and rebuild it through these 6 movements. Watch how audiences lean in rather than tune out. Notice how questions shift from skeptical to strategic. Observe how decisions accelerate when information flows through story. Master this framework, and you'll never simply present again, you'll compel, convince, and catalyze change.